welcome Ivan Hartle to the podcast.
Thank
Good to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Can I pour you a mezcal?
Yeah, like I said off air, when in Rome.
Yeah. So I have a confession to make.
Okay.
You've been playing. I went back and I checked after I introduced myself to you after your last gig.
Yeah.
You've been doing gigs here since 2020 or 2019?
Like in Vancouver?
At Guild.
Oh, at Guild. I think probably 2019.
2019.
Because I remember doing I don't know how many I did, but like before the pandemic, I was doing a few.
Yeah.
Cheers?
And I know, cheers.
Yeah.
I know I've seen you go on numerous times with other people's bookings. Like I've seen you be in the room or come on a couple times.
Oh yeah, like I did a thing with Crystal,
right
under the Harlem Moon. Yeah, Crystal Dos Santos. Shout out
to Crystal Dos Santos.
A little closer, right here.
It's Crystal Dos Santos it's probably got more shout outs on this show than anyone.
Right.
With good reason.
Right. Definitely good reason.
But I was and so the other day during your show, this was beginning of February, was your last gig at Guild.
Yeah.
And I think I was in my office finishing up a shift. You started playing, and I was like, "Who is this?" And I checked the bill, and I was like, "Okay, yeah." And then I went out, and I was like, I don't actually think that I've ever seen one of your full sets. And I stopped working. I closed the office, sat down, ordered a drink, and just sat and watched, which I don't often get to do, because a lot of times I'm in my office and I got tons of stuff going. But I was able to just sit down and take it all in. And you have an amazing live show.
Thanks, man.
Really, really, really cool to see. And it was cool to see someone. It's kind of nice to be surprised by someone that's been doing it in your backyard for so long.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, fair enough.
What's your? How did you get your start in Vancouver?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in North Van, and just kind of started, going to open mics. That was kind of the thing that got me into music. I always played and loved music, and but the initial foray into the music world was through open mics, a few different ones around town, and then
Did you ever play Café du Soleil?
I played there, not as an open mic, though.
Not as an open mic?
Yeah, that was one of my first gigs, was at Café du Soleil. I did, Jess Vira used to do one at Cardam's Donuts.
Yeah.
And
I work with Jess at Base Coast.
Okay, yeah. So
She's
that
great.
was I don't know if that was the very first one I did, but I think it was. And then she, at the time, she was kind of doing, there'd be open mics, and then they'd have kind of I can't remember the word, but it would be like your show. So, there'd be that open mic, and then you get like a little bit more of an extended set. And so I got to do that one time, and just kind of steady went from there.
How did it go from open mics to full gigs?
Man, I mean, it's just, I don't even remember exactly how it all went, but as you know, it's like you play open mics, you meet some people. I think Jess actually helped me book a few shows, kind of through her connections and through that open mic. And then Ian Cromwell, I remember I played at Locals Lounge, and I'm sure Ian Cromwell.
Yeah.
And that was shortly after doing the open
Was that a
mic
Locals Lounge at Guild?
No, it was just before. It was at the Belmont, the old Belmont.
Yeah. I still love that spot.
Yeah, and then so just kind of like that, you start, mingling with other artists and meeting new people, and then you kind of transition from open mics into. And
you play your gigs you play a lot of gigs at Guild with Matt, right?
Yeah, Matt Storm.
Yeah,
another shout out.
Yeah.
A lot with Matt.
Because you kind of do, I've seen a lot of times where it's like the two of you, it's either Matt's gig or it's your gig, but you're kind of like.
Yeah, I don't, we play a lot of kind of duo situations. Haven't as much recently, but in the past we'd play a lot of, shows where he would play a set, I would play a set, and then we'd kind of accompany each other on each other's sets. And then, when I started playing more full band sets, he drummed for me for a little while, and then recently he's been playing guitar and singing backups.
Yeah. Do you guys write together at all?
Yeah, right together, and I do all my recording with Matt because he's an amazing engineer, producer.
Or does he have what studio does he work out of? Does he have his own?
He works, it's kind of been a few different spots. There used to be a spot in kind of commercial in Powell called Orchid Studios. And that was owned by a guy, Rory McDonald, who actually has a studio out in Mission. So Matt kind of goes out to Mission. The Orchid Studio one in commercial is not there anymore, or it's different owners now. But and then he'll work, like he had a little spot in East Van there for a little bit, and
so the album that you released an album last year,
just a few months ago, December 15th, so right at the end of the year,
and that's available. I know it's available Spotify. It's probably available like Bandcamp and all the other spots.
All the spots.
All the spots. That was recorded with Matt.
He produced every song on there.
And that I know you've got a list of a bunch of singles that you've released on Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
Is this album this album that you released back in December? Was this your first full length album?
Yeah.
What was that like getting that out into the world?
Good. It felt good to get it out in the world. It was like I did an EP, 5-song EP in 2019, and then it was had a collection of singles kind of through the COVID years and whatnot, and then put together those singles with a bunch of new ones for the album, and it felt great to
so that's being, obviously being the collection included in that album is the collection of singles that you had released part and parcel throughout the COVID years.
Yeah.
And then the new material was that the creation of that album? Was it like, okay, I'm going to make an album. What do I have that's ready? Okay, I've got these 5 songs that I've released as singles. I've got this new stuff I'm working on. Or was it like kind of more like, hey, maybe we should put together an album? Like, what was the process like?
No. I mean, there was always the goal to put the album out, it was the collection of singles, and then the new songs. They all kind of fit. There was a couple others that I initially had thought I would throw on the album, but kind of held them for future releases. But it was always the intention was always to put the album together and get it out there. So I think it's like, as you know, it's like a lot of the music nowadays, it seems very single driven, and which is cool and it has its purpose, but I think it's neat to have them all together in one little spot,
Yeah.
And I mean, a lot of people don't necessarily listen to albums.
Do you still listen to albums?
I do, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's
we're a dying breed.
Yeah,
we are.
Yeah, and fair enough. I mean, it's it's kind of what,
because I know musicians that don't really listen to albums anymore. They're like,
well, there's always those certain albums that you can just throw on, and like Matt has a record player at his place, and it's just I guess old school, but just
I have a broken record player at my place.
Yeah,
the record player is fine, but I haven't figured out how to hook it up to the speaker yet.
Right, I had a broken record player for a little bit too.
It's frustrating because it's actually a really nice record player. It was a gift, but then I've got this sound bar.
Yeah,
and
sound bar with a record player,
and they're just like, it's non-compatible technology, I guess.
They don't like each other,
because it's like the technology coming out of one doesn't want to go into the other, and
right.
I'm like, come on, man. But I can't figure it out. I'm not smart enough to figure it out. And there's no one, like, I can't take it to a Best Buy and be like, figure this out. They're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like, there's
you're kind of on your own in that situation.
Yeah. Did you, did you grow up, like, you're a big album guy growing up?
Yeah. And I mean, I just loved music. And I wouldn't say I'm like, I don't want to paint a picture of like, oh, I only listen to albums. Like, I definitely listen to songs on their own. On their own, and of course. But like, grew up listening to all sorts of music, and like,
I grew up recording the top 10 on the radio.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
So
Your
like,
way to get a easy way to get a mixtape was just record the top
right.
10 on your
That's
favorite
kind of
radio
like
station.
what was those albums? Much music, or the collection of
Yeah, I think there was like
what were they called?
Big Shiny
Big
Tunes
Shiny
2.
Tunes. Yeah,
Big Shiny
like,
Tunes 2 is the big one. That was
yeah,
I was think I was like 13 or 14 when that
yeah.
came out.
I remember that one. Yeah,
And then that was the one with Blur and Manson and
yeah,
all that other weird shit.
yeah.
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 What were some big influences in your house growing up? Were your parents big music people?
Yeah, yeah. Both my parents are music people. My dad played guitar in bands for probably 15 years, kind of before my time. But
Right.
so there was guitars in my house, and he's a phenomenal guitar player. So
Yeah.
yeah, and there was always music playing in the house. You know, it was definitely like Saturday mornings, waking up to music in the living room was kind of the vibe. Yeah.
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 Was playing something that you always kind of knew you wanted to do, or is it something that you kind of stumbled upon? How old were you when you played your first open mic?
I was like probably early 20s.
Early 20s? Yeah.
Like I did some things prior to that too, some musical things. But yeah, I mean, I think I'm sure we'll get to some baseball stuff because I used to play baseball, and
Yeah.
but you know, it was kind of like I was playing baseball and focusing on that, but I just loved music, and I always played music kind of on the back burner on the side, like for me. And I didn't necessarily tell people, but I always had this thought that, you know, play baseball, and then when that finishes, I can go into music.
Cool. Yeah. And you played semi-professionally?
I never played professionally, but I played college in the States.
College ball?
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereabouts were you?
I went to a junior college in Iowa called Iowa Western for 2 years.
Yeah.
Go Reavers. And then I went to school, 4-year school in Kentucky, Western Kentucky.
These big baseball towns over there.
Yeah.
You know, it's really funny is you can say that, and like doesn't matter what state, what city someone says, you can be like, yeah, it's a big baseball town. That's probably true.
Pretty much, yeah.
It's that in football.
Yeah.
Like that. I love. I haven't spent a lot of time in the South. I did spend a little bit of time in Tennessee when I was younger, in Memphis.
Yep.
But I drove to get there. Like, so I went through a lot of small towns on Greyhounds and stuff like that.
Right.
And there's this phenomena in the United States where you've got these like small towns. The epicenter of the town is the high school football stadium.
Yeah.
Like that is the biggest thing that the town has, and still, like, that's where everybody goes on a Sunday afternoon. Like, they're still or the Saturday afternoon. It's like that boy's going to take us to state this year. When I remember being a kid while seeing that in television and people hearing that term, that boy's going to take us to state this year. That phrase is them talking about their local high school team. Like,
right.
It's such a crazy thing.
Yeah. It's it's just the culture, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy to think about the pressure on the kids, you know, like being so, like, obviously, like, that's a high school kid,
insane.
You know, and it's, you know, you got the people in the town talking about you. You know?
I was listening to like Saves the Day and Green Day and crying in high school. Like,
right. Yeah. But you were going to lead them to state, though.
I was going to take them to state. Yeah, I was going to take those tears to state. No, it's funny because I remember you talk about kind of like the baseball music. Like, do I go left? Do I go right? I'll go this way and then go that way afterwards.
Right.
I remember going through a similar thing when because I played baseball as a kid. Mm-hmm. Lived and breathed baseball. It was like the greatest thing ever. And then I got to about 15, and I got to the point where, you know, you're that point at adolescence where athleticism really goes through the roof with the young men. Like when you know, I remember playing rugby on an all year team. So I was playing grade 8. In grade 8, I was playing with the grade 12 guys, and I felt like I was playing with grown ass men.
Right.
And that's like, it's a transition where that competitive edge becomes something that's really intense.
Yeah.
And I was really into music. I was a band geek, but I was also heavily into drama. I was in all the theater productions, and it was like, do I do this baseball thing or do I do the arts thing? And I went with the latter. because I didn't really have that competitive nature anymore. It was like baseball to me was always something that was supposed to be fun first.
Right.
And don't get me wrong, I don't think that competitiveness is unhealthy. It just wasn't where I was.
Right. For sure.
But it's weird. I get where that age when you're like, you got the two things and wondering which road to take.
Yeah. And it's interesting, right? Because, you know, like I said, I always just loved music and I, you know how baseball gets when you get a little bit older, it kind of gets harder and harder.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of failure, a lot of stress. And I remember just turning to music so much in those times, you know, like playing ball during the day and then like going home and spending my quiet time playing the guitar and singing and whatnot, you know, because it's like, it was a release from kind of the stress of baseball and it was just, music was fun and music was, you know, what I love to do. And so
has songwriting always been part of your playing?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I always been writing songs since
yay high.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not that much taller than that now.
Yeah, I mean, you're the same height as I am, man. Let's not disparage our height.
Hey, we're there together.
Yeah,
we're there
exactly.
together. But yeah, I remember writing songs in high school and stuff, and all through the years.
Yeah. Do you have how many songs have you written that you can't remember?
I mean, there's definitely like a bunch out there that I remember. Yeah, I guess you don't remember, but every now and then you'll find like a little snippet of some sort of recording, you know,
and you're like
digging through the files and you're like, oh God.
I stumble across like every once in a while I'll stumble across like a napkin in a book. It's usually like an Orwell book or something like that. Because when I read George Orwell, I get philosophical and think I'm a talented writer. It'll be like a little snippet of like a thought or a journal entry or something like that. And whether or not it's a lyric or a piece of something. And I'll look at it and every once in a while I'll be like, oh man, that's not half bad.
Yeah.
But I have no recollection of writing it. I'm like, it's my handwriting. But then I go, which means that maybe I didn't write it. Maybe I just wrote down something that someone else said.
You gotta be careful there.
Yeah.
But
accidental plagiarism.
Yeah, it's kind of goes both ways, I guess, right? Like sometimes you'll look back and you'll find those things and you're like, oh, what was I doing there?
Yeah.
But then there'll be other times where I remember like one of the songs on the album called Lovin' On Ya, I kind of had some little snippet of a guitar part from like a few years prior, and then kind of was kind of going through files one day and found it, and then kind of got re-inspired to finish that idea off. Yeah. Sometimes it works like that.
Do you write from a lyrical place or a musical place, or both, or neither?
Well, I feel like you have to have
one.
I don't know if neither would apply, but I would say I definitely lean more so to the musical side of things for the initial kind of creation of the songs. But not to say that it's not lyrical, but usually it's like playing guitar and singing melodies and kind of going from there. And I try to, or sometimes it's that initial kind of inspirational moment, you know, when you have that guitar chord structure that you like and you kind of are singing a melody, and then just kind of let whatever comes out come out, you know, from a lyrical standpoint. And I've done that with a bunch of songs where whatever I kind of was singing in those moments, whether it was like a part of the chorus or a little bit of a verse, I'd kind of take that and write the rest of the song based on
almost
that.
Like it starts from a place of stream of consciousness.
Trying to think like, I don't often have like lyrics pre-written that I want to like superimpose onto a song or a melody. It's usually goes the other way.
Did you do any formal training musically?
No formal training. Like I said, my dad was a really good musician, so I mean, he wouldn't sit me down and give me lessons or anything like that, but it was
just kind of soaked it in.
Yeah, soaked it in. And, learning guitar, how it is when you're, early on when there's guitar tabs online, you find this tab and you spend all this time learning this song, and then you kind of forget to listen to the song, and you go and listen to it and be like, wait, that's completely wrong. So kind of in moments like that, I'd go to my dad and be like, wait, like, what's going on here? And he just, right?
Yeah. I was always like, I remember when tabs, I first entered into like my hemisphere of, like knowing what they are. I remember when I first discovered what they are. I'm sure they'd been around forever, but they became this new internet phenomenon of how everyone was learning how to play songs.
Yeah.
It was early high school, and I knew a couple guys that had learned like all this shit that 13-year-old dirty boys are listening to in the late 90s, which was like everything from Seattle and everything from the 70s. It was like nothing that you know early 70s rock and roll and metal and like everything from Seattle in the 90s was like what that generation listened to. It was like Doors, Zeppelin, Sabbath, Nirvana, like nothing else in between.
Right.
And I could never figure them out. I always struggled so much to like take someone else's like creation that from a paper perspective and like turn it into music. It was like a mental block. Mm-hmm. I could never do it. So my playing was always like, I always said I just faked it.
Till you made it.
Till I made it. I played bass and stuff and had fun with that. But even when we played covers, I was like, I'm not going to, unless it's like an iconic bass line, like Another One Bites the Dust. I'm not going to learn the bass line. I'm just going to like play bass to the song. Like everyone knows the melody.
Right.
That's what the people are going to focus on. I'm just going to play in the right key and hope that it sounds good. And then luckily I was with musicians that were better musicians than I was. And they would like steer me in the right direction. But I mean, I haven't played on stage since I was 25.
Right.
But
I guess there's different ways to think about that, right? Like you can, if you're just, I guess there's a time and place to kind of reproduce the song, but also it's like you could learn the song or learn a bit of the song and then the rest of it is kind of your interpretation.
That's what I always loved doing that. And just to play for myself, right?
Right.
There's a couple songs that, I don't know, the Felice Brothers?
Felice Brothers.
The Felice Brothers?
Felice Brothers.
They're from somewhere in the States, and they're like a folk Americana band. Okay. And they've got a couple songs that I just love to play. I wish I could remember the names of them. I wish I could remember how to play them. And then there's also like everyone's got a Dylan song or two that they love to play, and but that's very much what it was for me. I would like look up the chord structure when it was like I could play guitar well enough to be like, what are the root chords of the song, and then just move the capo up and down until I could find somewhere that I could sing it in,
somewhere where it felt right,
and then kind of bastardize it a bit,
right,
to make it fun. I always really enjoyed doing that. That's something that I really truly appreciate about really good cover songs, ones that aren't cover songs, ones that are like, because it's one thing to and there is, to your point, there is a time and place for a really good cover, right? And for someone to like, you're doing a good cover, you're doing an homage to this artist, you're playing it like people know it, but the other side of it is like doing a version of the song,
right?
And I don't know if you listened to Dan Mangan's recent cover album.
I haven't. I mean, I obviously know Dan Mangan, but I haven't heard his recent
so
cover
his
album.
I think he released it last year or the year before, and they're all songs that he's released. He had pre-released, and then he was just like, "Oh, I'll just throw it together.
Oh, I see.
Call it an album," as an oversimplification. But it's very much like he's putting his own heart and his own soul into these songs that the way he talked about it, because I actually asked him about him on this podcast. He was like, these are songs that I just love playing, that I love, and they have some meaning to me, which is something that I think is really neat. You have this when people take a song that was written by somebody else and they put their own soul into it.
Yeah.
All Along the Watchtower would be a perfect example.
Right. And I think, not to speak for him, but I'm sure it's like, for me, there's certain songs that I've played, like a few cover songs that I've played, and they almost take on a new life the more you play them, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And they become like kind of more yours, you know?
Yeah.
And then you'll go back and listen to the like recording every now and then and remember like, oh, wow, like I don't really play it like,
I don't play it like that at all.
Mine's a little different than that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's also, I mean, if you're doing like a Whitney Houston cover, exactly the same as the song, it's like, are you going to be able to do
You're gonna
it
fail. You're gonna
as,
fail.
as her, you know?
And I also love the way that, and I've actually mentioned this song. I think this is the third time I'm going to be mentioning this song on this podcast. So if I had any regular viewers,
If you mention it one more time, I'm leaving.
Yeah. Dolly Parton, I Will Always Love You. It's you listen to that song, you're like, that's an awesome tune. It's an awesome country tune. And then you listen to Whitney Houston's version and you're like, that's an awesome song.
Right.
That's an awesome soul R&B tune.
Yeah.
And they're like, the structure, the format, everything about the two songs is exactly the fucking same.
Yeah.
Two distinctly different genres.
Yeah.
And like you can't even really put your finger on like that much of what they're doing differently. It's like, but they're both amazing. And I think that's one of the things that it's something that's so cool about music is the way that it transcends genres.
Yeah. And it's, like you said, it's the same song, but it's just different people's interpretations of the song. And their, their soul, their whole life is kind of in this song. And even though it's like a song that they're, doing of someone else's, it's like, it becomes their own. Yeah. It's interesting. It's
When
cool.
you look for, cause obviously I've seen you do like all your original material. You have a full length original album. But obviously when you gig in this city, you have to have a lot of covers in your back pocket. When you're looking for songs that you want to perform, what do you look for in terms of like, these are the songs that I want to cover? Is it a personal thing, or is it like how do you divide the songs that you are important here to the songs that like are going to get you the gig?
I mean, that's a good question. It's got to be a song that I like. I don't think I've ever kind of gotten to a stage where it's like, oh, I'm going to play this song because people will like that.
Yeah.
It's got to, and I think people recognize that too. Like when someone is singing or playing a song that they're not really like fully invested
when
in.
They're phoning it in.
And I don't play like a ton of covers really. Like I'll try to stick to my stuff, but it's always fun to play a cover, and especially when people will know it or whatnot. But it's definitely got to be a song that like moves the needle for me, so to speak.
Yeah.
There's like a few, like I played a Beatles song a lot through the years. Don't Let Me Down.
Yeah.
And like
classic.
Yeah. And my dad was a huge Beatles fan. So like, there's always a lot of Beatles music playing in my household. And it's, it's obviously it's a great song. And it's like, I remember singing that song as a 10-year-old,
Yeah.
So I feel like, for the most part, if I'm deciding to put a cover into the set, it's something that means something to me, and I'm like itching to play or sing.
Yeah. What are some of your? You mentioned your dad being a big musician growing up. What are some other?
My mom too.
Corners.
My mom plays guitar, and
oh really?
Yeah,
cool.
she like. We have a banjo in my house that my mom built.
I saw the coolest thing the other day. I'm getting distracted by your
Red hair.
banjo because I'm getting distracted by your red hair. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
I saw a guitar banjo, and it's like I picked it up, and it wasn't. I don't know. It wasn't the other day. This was probably years ago, but everything after high school was the other day. As a banjo, it was a guitar that was a banjo, so it sounded like a banjo, but it was strung and tuned like a guitar.
Interesting.
So it was you could play the banjo without playing the banjo.
So it was like playing the guitar, but it was a banjo.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. It was kind of, it was neat. It was neat for me because
an actual banjo, it's different, right? You got the
half string and
the half string,
and
like
the tuning's all different.
Yeah.
It's a super cool instrument though. What were some other,
so you started playing Free Fallin' on the banjo on the,
I did, yeah, because it's all D.
Yeah,
it's one of the few covers that I know. It's just D with a finger roll.
Yeah.
So Tom Petty, was that an influence growing up?
Tom Petty. I mean, I definitely like some Tom Petty songs for sure. I wouldn't say he was my main influence.
No,
but
yeah. I don't know if Tom
he's
Petty
got some good songs.
Yeah, he does. Some of his early Heartbreaker stuff is really good, and then he's obviously got like all the classics.
Yeah,
but yeah. So, what were some other big
influences,
or just big staples in your household growing up?
Yeah, I mean, my dad was he was a big classic rock, big classic rock guy. So a lot of classic rock, a lot of Beatles.
For him, it was just rock.
Right. True. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of Beatles stuff. You know, I like me personally, I listen to kind of anything and everything. You know, kind of not really like, I wasn't like a one genre kind of guy and not listen to anything else.
Yeah.
Like I listened to a lot of music growing up, and I'm definitely gravitated to more of kind of the soul, bluesy kind of stuff, and jazz, like a lot of vocal jazz, like old, like from the 50s and stuff.
Yeah.
Were big influences for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have any like...
You want some names?
No, I was just, do you have any big like stuff that you're listening to right now that's sort of catering to your
like production of music or
Yeah.
making of music? Yeah, I think, I mean, that's the thing, right? I think that plays a part in a lot of artists when they make music. It's, you know, you have your kind of historical references, what you listen to and what you have connections to from growing up, and then you kind of have the current. I would say during this album, it was a lot of I loved Leon Bridges, and like Krungbin, and then this artist Sun Little, who I saw open up for Leon Bridges in Vancouver. I can't remember what year it was.
Sun Little's amazing.
Sun Little, yeah. So Sun Little was like probably my number one. I think on one of my Spotify raps, it was like I was the top 1% or something. So
his song, "The River,"
yeah,
that's like 2 or 3 years in a row. That was one of my top
Nice.
top Spotify plays.
Yeah, yeah, he's amazing. Oh, I'm good, thanks. Stick with the Asahi.
Yeah, it's great. You talk about the influences of growing up versus I think that the old cheesy question that people used to ask is well, it's I remember hearing it's like what's in your CD player right now, and before that was like what's in your tape deck, or what station are you tuned to right now, or what's next on your playlist. But often I think it's surprising, like people.
It's interesting to hear though. It is like the cheesy question, but it is like it is cool to hear what people connect with. And
because I've listened to your album, and I've seen you, and it's no surprise to me that you're a fan of Sun Little, but it wouldn't be one of the names that I would like pull out of a hat to be like, this is where this guy's.
It's very personal too, right? Like
it is a personal question. It's almost like, are you asking me what color underwear I'm wearing right now? Like
that too, but I was thinking from the standpoint of like personal to black, by the way. You know, like when people
thought I was going to have to work hard for that one.
You know, when you talk to people after a show or something, and they'll often say like, oh, like it really gives me, you know, so-and-so vibes, or like, you know, I think of this, and then it's,
what's
in my
your
mind,
reaction
it's
to
like,
that? Because I hate
it
doing
depends
that
on who they say, I guess.
Because I will often tell, like, I'll make that comparison behind someone's back.
Right.
Like, I don't know how else to say it, but if I see someone play, I'll mention to a colleague or mention to a friend, like, yeah, they're cool. They got like this kind of vibe going
right.
on, and I'll always try to do like at least like 2 or 3 artists, like, probably because of my obsession with trying to sound sophisticated, but also like I want them to know that like they're not cookie cutter. They're doing
right,
but it's like
but it's you.
But yeah, exactly. But I really don't like telling artists that like, oh yeah, you reminded me of so and so, because I feel like it just seems rude to me. I don't know why I don't like doing it, but it just, so what's your take on it?
I mean, I always just, I kind of have the understanding that it's, you know, whatever the person you're talking to, it's kind of based off their listening preferences.
Right.
You know, so like they're going to draw from what they know or what they listen to. So I don't take it as, oh, they think I'm this person, or, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not going to name any names, but me and Matt have a running joke of like a person that he often gets when people say that. And it's like,
oh, you're not going to name any names?
No, we can't name names. I told you what color underwear I had, so I can't name names here.
Fair enough. I'll take it.
But it's like, I'll say it's an artist that like
neither of you like.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of a running joke with us, but
yeah,
he'll get that sometimes.
I did once get, when I was doing like my own open mic shit. And I think I only ever played like two or three gigs of my own stuff, and I one time got an artist that I fucking hated, and I was like, I'm done.
Yeah, but
I'm done.
Yeah,
and I was, yeah. But it's a weird. I maybe that's why I find it rude, because I also think that every person is bigger than their influences. Right. And I think it's such a, like, when I ask the question to people, like, what did you grow up listening to? What did you, it's more of an interest in how people tick and musically, mm-hmm. than it is like, oh, that's why you sound like this. Because I think that it's, I think that people are much bigger than the 5 artists that they can think of off the top of their head that they like.
Right.
You know, it's like, what are you listening to now? Black Keys and Kings of Leon. Like, that's like,
sure,
all of what you are now, because it's what you've said.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. But also on the other hand, it's like, if they're coming up to you and telling you, I mean, they're only coming up to you to talk if they enjoyed the show, or they liked the music. And then, I mean, I think it's just a common reaction of, you know, humans to compare and say like, oh, it reminds me of this or that. And, so I mean, you can look at it through that lens as well.
That's the better lens to look at it, I think. Yeah.
See, I'm saying that now just to, you know,
just so I look like the asshole. And you look like
I'm trying to play the hero here.
You're the guest on the show. It's fine. That's what we're going for. So you've got just this first full length album under your belt. What's on the horizon?
Well, there's definitely more music. I got a few songs, a couple that I've been playing live actually that I'm pretty excited about. That
you haven't recorded yet?
Haven't recorded
cool.
yet. Yeah. There's a couple that are like, I've done some live bed tracks, but just kind of have to finish them off. And then a couple that are completely blank slate. And so the plan going forward is to, I don't know if I'll do another full length album like in the immediate future, but maybe like a 4 or 5 song EP. Yeah. Kind of like I did for my first release in 2019. But we'll see what happens.
What was it like going from, because you mentioned it earlier in the interview, or maybe this was even when we were off camera. I think it was in the interview about moving more to like full band stuff. What was that transition like? Because
just like in terms of playing live, or
in terms of playing live, songwriting, like, you know, are your songs, a lot of your songs are they more fully fleshed out when you bring them, like when you bring songs to an album, be like, okay, I'm gonna throw in drums and throw in bass and throw in a lead. It's a full song. You wrote a song and then you're adding stuff in it. Is that?
I think every song is kind of different.
So the song's kind of different.
Yeah, I mean, for this last album, there was a little bit like that, where you know, you might think, oh, like some keys would be nice on this, or something, and then you do it and it's great and it works out, and then maybe the same idea, you like, oh, some keys or something would be great on this, but you do it and it doesn't really fit or doesn't work for one reason or another. But I think I have a fairly good sense of like what I hope would be in the recording. So like there's a couple songs like a song called Remedy on the album. It was just, I kind of knew going in that I wanted it to just be a kick drum and guitar and vocal. And that's kind of how we recorded it.
Yeah.
And then other songs I knew wanted to have the full ensemble of instruments. Both me and Matt Storm, we're big fans of kind of like trying to capturing the live feel as much as possible.
Right. Yeah.
So there's a couple songs on the album I did where there were live kind of drum, bass, guitar to kind of get that mesh of the live sound, and I'm hoping to do that with a few new songs as well. Live drum, bass, guitar, and maybe even live vocal as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, usually it's kind of, I mean, it's different with every song.
Yeah.
But you know, sometimes you have a vision and it doesn't work out, and then sometimes you have the vision.
What's it like going from you know, playing open mics, just you, guy with guitar, song you wrote in your basement, to, you know, the full band, transitioning to being like, okay, so now I can write from a different perspective. Now I can write from a perspective of multiple instruments with multiple people playing, with some input from artists that I respect, you know, Matt, for example.
Mm-hmm.
How does that change your headspace as a writer? And what was that like moving into the fuller band arena?
Yeah, it kind of takes a little bit of the load off for sure.
Yeah.
Especially live, I would say. I remember hearing John Mayer talk about this at one point, like, because I remember listening to a lot of his like early stuff where it's just him in a cafe. Yeah. And he's like, you kind of have to be the superhero. Like you're playing everything. And obviously playing live with other people, you know, you let them do their thing, you know, in certain spots, or they like their energy, their soul, if you want to call it that, is coming through in the music, and you can kind of let them do their thing. And you don't have to, if you're playing solo, you kind of have to do everything, you know. Mm-hmm. In terms of the songwriting, I mean, yeah, it's, you know, sometimes it could just be a certain drum beat, or, you know, a certain bass line, or something like that could spark a song and spark the inspiration. Yeah. Because, you know, I like to sit with my guitar and write songs. That's kind of primarily how I do it. But sometimes even just like programming a little drum beat,
which is something that like it's so
just opens you up to like kind of different ideas.
The fact that, I mean, that was something that was so, when instrument was first in my hand, that was barely something that existed. Yeah. Being able to like, and only to people that were like really tech savvy that had like the ability to do that.
Right.
Now it's really commonplace, which is something I think is amazing. The ability, you know, I remember when GarageBand first came out and everyone had like one or two friends, they were able to put together like 3 or 4 tracks that actually sounded pretty decent on GarageBand. You were like, this is pretty cool, right? And then it just got better and better and better and better and better to the point where now, you know, I think it's a lot. one of the evolutions of music that I think is really neat is how much more accessible creation is to a broader base. It's a lot easier. Right. I don't think easier is the right word, but it's a lot more available, right, for people to get their stuff out there and be heard, right, which I think is something that's really neat, because I think the stumbling blocks, the roadblocks, the gatekeepers, to use a Dan Mangan phrase, were much more in place 20 years ago than they are now, or 25 years ago, right, which is one of the upsides of the technology revolution.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And it's, even just creating the music too. Like getting it out there is one thing, but yeah, just the creation aspect of it is.
Yeah. And being
it's so much more.
I want to play to a drum track.
Yeah. Yeah.
Boop, 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 boop.
Right.
Now I'm playing to a drum track.
And then you can look at it on the other side of things too, and you can think it's can be overwhelming too, right, like just the kind of endless opportunities. My older brother actually is a musician as well, and he's kind of more on the electronic side of things.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember talking to him or hearing him talk about how, it's literally like, this huge array of possibilities with a song when you're kind of, doing it electronically, and it's like you can do one thing and it would change it dramatically.
Yeah.
And it's like overwhelming. And I remember when I was a bit younger and listening to his music, he'd have electronic music and then he'd have an acoustic kind of like side project.
Yeah.
And it was like he'd get overwhelmed by the electronic side of things and he'd go to the acoustic because it was just.
I was always really, I knew a few musicians growing up that were able to like dip into both those ponds. Mm-hmm. And myself being like a big fan of, I'm just a big fan of music. I mentioned Bass Coast at the beginning of the interview.
Right.
I run the beverage program at Bass Coast. I have for the last couple of years, I think. It's a fantastic festival. One of my favorite festivals ever. Shout out to Bass Coast. But it's a boutique electronic music festival. Mm-hmm. I grew up listening to, American folk music, blues, country, soul, like all that shit. And I don't really see a big difference between the two. And that's one of the things I love about music so much. Mm-hmm. Is I talk to artists that are electronic artists, and the way that they talk about music, the way that they talk about creation of music, the way that they talk about how music affects them and what it means to them, is the same way that instrumentalists talk about music.
Right. And
it's really, I've only met a handful of people in my life that are really accomplished at both, that can like, Mark, I don't know, do you know Mark Woodyard?
I know,
Lazy Sir. He's a crazy talented dude.
Yeah.
Really great guitarist, amazing vocalist. Mm-hmm. Lazy Serp Orchestra is they're an awesome band. They actually perform at Bass Coast, so they're like half and half. They're like
right.
live act with the electronic thing. But I think again, I just think that's something that's really magical about music, is that it doesn't really know any bounds.
Yeah,
and
it's kind of, I guess that's art, right? Like it's just a different avenue of art and expression. Yeah,
but that's interesting to hear your brother talk about how it's that world is so overwhelming, because like when you're playing a song, you're coming out with a chord progression, and you're like, well, this is the feel I'm going for the song, and I wrote it. But if I took it down a half step and like turn this to a minor, I might get that like more soulful, dirgy feeling that I'm going for.
Yeah.
And that's like, you can do that with a click of a button when you're dealing with the electronic realm. It can be like, and you're like, okay, that's what but it's to do it. You have to transpose the whole song,
right? And
actually like change a chord that you're playing mid song to do it. And it's a different it's a different
Yeah,
thing.
you might start doing it, and then halfway through you're like,
Yeah, it's not, but like that. So yeah, but to have the understanding and capacity to see it from out here,
yeah,
I can see why you'd be overwhelmed with it.
yes, yeah, definitely, and yeah, and just it's like, yeah, just how quickly you can do it, like you said, and how much it can change the sonic profile of the song, and yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. Have you done the have you toured it at all?
Yeah. I've been mostly the west coast of Canada.
Yeah.
I've done a lot on the island. I've been through BC, Alberta.
How do you feel about the touring game?
I mean, I love
Yeah.
going on the road and playing new places. Yeah,
I find I get it's a mixed bag of responses to that question. You know, some people love it, and some people loved it and now they hate it. Some people, because it's a lot of work. There's no.
Well, there's different aspects to it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like all the booking and organizing, and that is, definitely is tough. But the actual act of touring and playing in different cities is pretty cool. I know it's like, I'm sure a lot of people feel this or say this. It's, you simplify your life, when you're on the road playing music. There's, you kind of worry about the important things, like, okay, I gotta eat, I gotta drink water, do whatever, and then I'm playing the show. You don't have to. It's kind of like freeing to a certain extent. Mentally,
when I was in my, I think I was 25 when I did this. I bought a Greyhound pass for North America for the summer. It was like $500. And my goal was to get to Memphis. I really wanted to go to Memphis. I was supposed to go with a friend, but he fell in love and ditched me.
Right.
He got married, so I didn't feel that bad for about 10 years, but then he got divorced. And so now I still feel bad.
So do you still have his ticket?
I don't have his ticket. But I took my little travel guitar. It's one of those like ones that's this big, and a bunch of demos. I had a stack of demos, and I was like, I'm going to play an open mic in every city that I go to, and just I'm going to do my own tour.
Right.
I think I actually played like 3 open mics the entire time I was gone, because I get to a city and it was actually surprising to find how many cities didn't have open mics.
Oh, really?
And then I actually didn't end up in that many cities because I would just get to a place and I, stop and drink too much and then move on. But it's always something that I've always, I like asking people about it because it's something that I've always wanted to do.
Right.
To actually, do a proper tour and.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like it could happen.
I just got to start playing open mics again.
Yeah.
I know it was 15 years ago. I'm not as young as I was.
Yeah. I mean, and this kind of like ties back to when I was playing baseball, it's fun to, see new places and places you wouldn't normally go to, which is always cool. And you just kind of like, you leave behind the worries of, day-to-day life when you're at home and thinking about all the things you need to do, all the things, you need to plan, it's just everything's simplified. You're just, what your task is for the day, and that's to play the show and then get yourself prepared for the show and then have fun. In betweens.
Yeah. Have you ever done any like really badly hungover next day travel days?
Badly hungover next day travel days. I've done some like bad sleeping kind of arrangements, and then having to travel the next day and play. Like I remember, I can't name any names again, or places. Yeah,
just insert the names of random Muppets. It makes the story better.
But yeah, there's definitely been a few where it's like, you thought you had a place to stay at a certain venue, and then wasn't really somewhere you wanted to stay. And
Yeah. They put a cot in the alley.
Yeah. So things like that. But yeah,
Like,
there's always adventures on the
Yeah.
road. Nothing ever really goes to plan. So it's you got to fly by the seat of your pants for sure sometimes.
Yeah. Any favorite places, highlights that you've played?
I played a few shows in Tofino that have been really cool.
Oh yeah. I've never been to Tofino.
Oh really?
Yeah.
You should go.
I should go. I get that a lot.
Yeah, I remember playing. I can't remember. I think it was 20. Yeah, it was the fall of 2022. I got to play this really cool show in Victoria at the McPherson Theatre. It was kind of a fundraising concert for Community Living Victoria, and I was fortunate to be the headliner, and it was super cool. Big venue, like lots of people. Great show. And then we went to Tofino the next night, and we were thinking like, coming off this like really big show with like big venue, all these people, and then going to Tofino, like this small theater, might be like, a natural letdown,
Right.
And then we ended up playing this show, and it was like one of all of the guys in the bands, one of our favorite shows ever. It's just like a magical show. And I think it was like 70 seat theater. But yeah, it was just, one of those nights where everything just the energy was, into place. Everything was working. So yeah, Tofino, a few spots there. I definitely I played on the island, like Victoria. I've always loved playing on the island. I played a show in Lethbridge one time. That was really cool. Yeah. The Owl Acoustic Lounge. Shout out. Yeah. That was a super cool place and cool show.
I've never been through Lethbridge, but I've worked with like a weird amount of people from Lethbridge.
One of my old baseball friends lives in Lethbridge now. So.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any people that you played with that have gone pro?
Yeah, definitely a lot. Like through the years.
You don't have to name names.
Yes. Yeah, like I was fortunate to play on the national team in high school, the Canadian national team.
Oh, dope. Cool.
Yeah. So like a few guys from that team. Brett Laurie, if you remember.
Yeah.
He was on that team. Believe it or not, Luke Wilson.
Yeah.
Football player who's now like starring on TSN. He was playing baseball on that team as well.
Cool.
Amazing guy. One of the greatest guys you'll meet. And then like through college, bunch of teammates and opponents for sure have all gone on. Yeah.
Sweet. Well, before I sign off, I'm going to do a tiny little nip here for myself to cheers.
Okay.
Do you want one of those to cheers?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, let's do
it. When is your next? When's your next gig? When are your next couple gigs?
One at Guilt in a little bit, and then a bunch of nothing to announce at this moment.
Nothing to announce at this moment.
A few.
What's your Guilt gig that's on the books?
It's in June.
It's in June.
I haven't officially confirmed it, but it's I believe it's the 28th or 29th.
June, late June. Check the Guilt and Company calendar for Ivan Hartle's booking.
A lot of things in the works for the spring, summer. So
it was awesome having you on.
Yeah,
I'm excited to see all the things that you do.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on, Brandon.